Blessings, brothers and sisters. Let's take a moment to just take a deep breath. Choose whether in through your mouth or in through your nose. It doesn't really matter. Let's just take one good deep breath. So let's do this. Hold it. Let it go. And let's continue this as we go throughout this conversation. Let's take a deep breath. Hold it. And let it go. It's important that we take longer breaths throughout the day, and that we actually hold our breaths and we become aware to the breath. As this may not seem very important, it very well is. So I want to start this conversation with this concept called the fear barrier. And this fear barrier is created in one's mind that usually limits the person of going forward. There's a moment where we have a thriving capability, and then when we run out of the juice that keeps us thriving, we hit this barrier. And this barrier, no matter what you're doing, either it's a passion that you're trying to do in your own life, or it's a career choice, a decision for starting a business, an idea, a concept. It's like a rubber band effect. This fear barrier. What happens is that you're doing great, you're pulling, and once you get to the furthest you can go, there's tension. And with this tension, there's going to be a lot of second thinking. Oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choice? Should I just throw in the towel and give up now? Or this is impossible. I couldn't go any further than I am right now. There's so much I have to do, it's not possible. All these things is part of this rubber band effect, and when there's too much tension, either it snaps completely or it will snap back to ground one, back to where you barely even started, or nothing at all, because that's where this barrier leads us. And so when we get in a position of facing this barrier, which is considered the fear barrier, we all have this in any given situation. It's because our mind seeks for what is comfortable. It seeks for what it's used to. And if it's not used to something, it's going to challenge it because it wants to go back to what was comfortable. That's why it's important to stay out of the comfortability. Such as an example, it's better to stay outside the house all day rather than inside the house, because once you're inside the house, it's harder for you to go outside. But if you're outside and going amongst your day, you're bound to would like to stay outside longer. So we gotta get ourselves out of the bed, out of the couch, and go outside and face things at of more of an awareness. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean you can't have a comfortable decision. You see, when we're given an uncomfortable situation, how are we supposed to face these situations? Well, I'm going to tell you this. This is where breath work comes in. And when you become the master of your own mind, you can utilize the breath. Breathing in, breathing out. You can allow stillness to take place. You're not obligated to answer anybody at the very exact moment they ask you a question. You can take as long as you need. You have that authority. You don't need to take direct responses, especially from a place of fight or flight, aka survival mode. When we're operating from fight or flight, we're most likely not in control of our own minds. Instead, our mind is leading us, and it's based on animalistic behavior. And animals operate not with a frontal cortex like us that has this reward center in our mind. We're given a consciousness awareness to much deeper, profound ways of thinking, choosing, deciding what we need to do, how can we do this, what are the other options we can do. Don't get me wrong, animals are very smart, but the frontal cortex is what separates us, and that is going to be the reward center in our brain, which releases dopamine. And dopamine is a chemical that gets released when anytime you're stimulating yourself in some sort of way. Like, for instance, when you drink coffee, it's not so much the caffeine that's jacking you up, but it's dopamine levels that is being produced. And what's happening right now is that we are overproducing rewards. We're rewarding ourselves so much that it becomes comfortable. And so our rewards are not as easy as it used to be to feel gratitude. We need more. We want more and more and more. We need more of this to satisfy our reward center. Everybody likes to win. No one likes to lose. So, depending on what you give your attention to, that is what's taking your rewards from yourself. Because even though we can reproduce the dopamine in our bodies, we got the dopamine levels, we can dry ourselves out, which then becomes sluggish to ourselves. Our mind becomes sluggish. It doesn't operate the way it once was when we're kids. I'm pretty sure you remember when you were a kid and you had your first candy bar, how jacked up you were with the sugar. See, sugar is also, it's a reward. It releases dopamine. If you look at the study of your brain of somebody who does cocaine and ingests the white sugar, it's the activity in the brain is going off just like the guy who did cocaine. So these are all leading us to a fight or flight response, which then creates habitual patterns that will lead you to hitting the fear barrier. Because when you run out of resources, when you run out of rewards or feeling of gratification for the rewards, then you hit this wall. That's another form of a way of you hitting this wall. So, what we can do, instead of operating from fight or flight, we can always take a deep breath. And then, when we're ready, then we can decide. And just because things don't seem to be weighing out for us in our favor, doesn't mean that it's gonna be impossible. You see, our mind is set on autopilot, and if you let it run on autopilot for too long, it will lead you. And it can do a good damn job. However, based on where you want to go, based on how you feel deep down inside, you've given up on many things. You lost hope. You've lost the drive to continue forward, so you just give up altogether. But you see, that's limiting beliefs. And when we have limiting beliefs, there is a root problem here. And it all comes and stems from the mind. You see, we're far too much operating from the intellect. And it's not your fault. It's not your parents' fault. It's just how we're brought up, especially with this education system. They want you to pass the test. They want you to pass the mathematics, the science. They want you to memorize the history books. When in fact, history is just another his story. But that's another topic. And so we're tested on our memory based on our intellect rather than our emotions. And when we start to focus on the emotions, especially those that had been suppressed, we can see that there has been a constraint in our day-to-day functionalities between yourself and the outside world. Because if you don't got your inside world all worked out, figured out, your outside world's gonna mirror reflect that. So that's why it's also important to start to look at yourself and see yourself from the childhood and anything that had come up that was traumatic in any form of way. And if you feel like it shows up in your day-to-day, these are things that you're gonna need to really take the time to heal. Because also, if we are caught in a fear barrier situation, it's because of a limiting belief. And most times traumas, in fact, can create these limiting beliefs. I can't do this, I can't do that. What's stopping you? You have to ask yourself these questions. What is stopping you from going forward? It's your own mind. So the key here is to drop down into your heart and generate your thoughts from that place, from the heart center. Breathe into your heart and breathe out through your heart. And make choices based on heart awareness rather than the mind's desire, because the mind is always gonna have its desires. The flesh, the physical body, it's the animalistic part of us, will lead you down the path that can soon lead you to a place where you may have not wanted to be. So you gotta take control of your thoughts. So when you practice meditation, focus on your breath. And when a thought comes up, let it go. And train yourself to keep letting those thoughts go. No matter what. No matter what comes up, just let those thoughts go. And just find yourself a place, a safe place where you can practice being still. So that when something conflicting comes up, you're not operating on fight or flight. Instead, you're operating with awareness. You take a deep breath, and then you make a choice when you're ready. See, your mind is a tool, not your leader. You are the leader. Don't let your mind lead you, because it will go somewhere else. You are powerful, and all the words that you say is an affirmation. So choose words that promote harmonious loving, peaceful, positive abundance. Choose words that's gonna make you feel the emotions. Your emotions are energy in motion. And when you put emotions in your thoughts, you can manifest even stronger. So when you say something negative out of fight or flight, it's not a surprise that something will manifest. So be careful. Be careful what you say. And be careful what you wish upon others. That's why they say love thy enemies. If you love thy enemies, you'll be surprised. Perhaps one day they'll become your best friends. Forgiveness is key. And whenever a negative thought comes up, just let it go. But don't be afraid to embrace the anger. Because you can't suppress. You can't let the emotions. You You can't let the emotions stay in, I mean. For not too long anyways. Because then it just roots itself and it becomes a problem. So find yourself a safe place. Practice stillness. And be a choice maker from your heart. These things will change your life. And this is the little message from me to you. Blessed be.